lack of resources to staff, not only the correctional officers, but the civilian officers. Do it by finding the quality that is available in our city, including a 55-year-old man who passed away just yesterday.
Are you also making the open to reconsider some of the new jail locations that you said you wanted?
Good morning, good morning. Good to see you all. It's a term you're going to hear me say over and over and over again as I pull together this amazing team. Before we start today, I just want to take a moment, have a moment of silence for the correction officers who we lost during COVID, and for the inmate that we lost yesterday or earlier from a drug overdose. No matter who they are, they're human beings. And we want to show our humanity for the families and for the people of this city. Thank you. I am going to continue to say that we are, oh, let me see what's going on to the left of me. Hold on, what are we doing? What are we doing? Huh? What are we doing? Because I want my unions here with me. You know, we're partners here. One thing you're going to find, folks, that there's one set of hands on the steering wheel of this city right now, they're mine. I'm the leader. I'm the mayor. I'm going to make the determinations, and I'm going to make the audibles. We are going to be united in this city if people like it or not. We're coming together. We have an enemy here. It's called COVID, crime, dysfunctionality, and we can't get our city up and operating. And the lack of clarity adds to that. So I'm here today to once again use a term you're going to hear, history making. I am appointing today the first Latino commissioner of the Department of Correction. It's all right. Our future criminal justice system must be transformed. And I believe it's crucial that we transform that system, building on a body of trust. And I think that when you look over what has happened in our correctional facilities, it did not start this year. It did not start last year. It has been an erosion of our correctional facilities for years. And we have ignored cries from inmates, and we have ignored cries from correctional leadership. They have been talking about the problems on Rikers for years, and we have taken an attitude that it is over there. It's no longer in eyesight, and so let's ignore the problem. And the irony of it is that the overwhelming number of inmates are black and brown. The overwhelming number of officers are black and brown. We basically said, let what happens to them happen to them. And there's a lot of blame to go around. And I am aware of that blame. Just 2 years ago, we held a hearing right here in this room on the city's plan to close Rikers Island. Since then, it has become clear, and our entire criminal justice system is in desperate need of reform. And not just simple reform, but top to bottom reform. We must reform Rikers and uphold the rights and dignity of the people that are held in custody and the men and women who are responsible for protecting them. 40% of the correction officers are women, and an overwhelming number of them are women of color. We are at a pivotal moment, and it's crucial that we acknowledge that moment. Our city jails and prisons have been grappling grappling with several crises at the same time. Rapid spread of COVID. Correction officers and inmates could not get tested and could not get masked at the beginning of this pandemic, and no one cared. We see the increase in violent assaults on correction officers. We see the inhumane condition for inmates. Nowhere is the dysfunctionality of our criminal justice system heightened than in this dysfunctional system at Rikers Island, where the Department of Corrections is headquartered. Rikers Island has been a national embarrassment, and we have ignored it. And for far too long, and the situation there has been unacceptable. It is a stain on our city. Systemic issues and lack of leadership have led to routine, inhumane, and violations of human rights. The latest report by the Federal Monitor overseeing the islands found that conditions are previously and continue to be worsening. 16 people in city custody have died this year, including a 55-year-old man who passed away just yesterday. I toured the facility and walked through, and the leadership tried to take me into different areas so I couldn't see exactly what was taking place. And the union membership said, no, we need to go where the crisis is located so you can see it. And I told the leadership there, I will not take another step in that facility and go back to Brooklyn if I'm not going where those members are telling me to go. We are not playing, and we are not going to cover up this dysfunctional system that is unacceptable. Basic health and safety standards were not being met because of the increases of the jail population, lack of resources for staff, not only the correction officers, but the civilian population on Rikers Island is treated in a inhumane fashion. And most importantly, a lack of urgency by city leaders. And so the city has put in plan a motion to close the facility and build new borough-based jails. We cannot wait. Now we must have changes on Rikers Island. We also can't talk about closing the physical structure if we're refusing to close the pipeline that feeds the building. That is why I brought on board Chancellor Banks. That is why I have a new police commissioner that's part of that vision. And that is why I'm making the announcement here today. We need to fully fund initiatives like Fair Future that looks after those young people that age out of foster care and more likely to be a victim of a crime or participate in a crime. We need to target and ensure that we give support to things like dyslexia screening and for those with learning disabilities and mental health issues. The next commissioner of our Department of Correction must be someone who can balance the twin imperatives of public safety and reform. Someone who has a forward-thinking, holistic version for our correctional system on how to move forward. And someone who's emotionally intelligent, a term I'm going to continue to use. That is the prerequisite to being part of the Adams team. You must be emotionally intelligent. How do you lead agencies of this magnitude if you cannot lead your own demeanor and your own interaction? They must be dedicated to ensuring the safety and well-being of the 9,000 correction officers who staff our city jails and prisons. More than 40%, as I indicated, are women, looking after 5,000 inmates. And I'm proud of this appointment today, one of the most significant appointments I can make. Molina, 20 years of experience in law enforcement, most recently as the chief of the Las Vegas Department of Public Safety. As chief of the department, Mr. Molina oversees the 400 employees who staff the city marshal corps and the city jail system. His career has spanned the three main pillars of the criminal justice system: law enforcement, prosecution, and correction. He is a son of the Bronx. I'm not going to hold that against him. So he's from here. He's from our city. He knows our city. And when I sat down with Louis, what touched me the most was hearing his life story, hearing about his mom and dad, hearing how they struggled to provide for their families, hearing the real life stories, and understanding how the people who are in these facilities are coming from broken homes, not a home where mom and dad is there, that they're coming from a life of pain with a painless end. That's what I need in my commissioner. He began his law enforcement career with the NYPD. He wore the blue uniform for 13 years. Equally important, throughout his career, he has been a reformer. When he served as first deputy commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Corrections, he was credited with instituting successful rehabilitation and reentry programs. After a DOJ investigation found widespread use of excessive force at the facility, he stepped in and corrected the problem. The acting U.S. attorney at the time called the jail a transformed institution. In his current role as the chief of the Las Vegas department, he championed the 30 by 30 initiative, which aims to ensure that 30% of the department's employees are women by 2030. He shares my vision for a criminal justice system where we, one, support our correction officers. They did not commit a crime to get there. They should have the right to serve the time, perform their duties, and come home safely to their families. Provide humane conditions for inmates. We often forget violent inmates attack other inmates and officers, and that is missing from the dialogue. Reduce recidivism rates. We don't want to have a revolving door system where people spend their entire lives on Rikers Island. And most importantly, work towards a long-term transformative vision for our jail system by stopping the revolving door punitive system and using holistic rehabilitation system. So today is extremely significant and important. The continuation of breaking down barriers, of looking inward and finding the talent that has been sitting on the bench for a long time. How do we have a correctional facility that's predominantly black and Latino, yet never had a Latino commissioner? How do we have a school system where the students are predominantly black and brown, but we don't have a black or brown chancellor? How do we have a law enforcement system where the largest and overwhelming number of encounters are black and brown residents of this city, yet we could not find a black or brown woman to head the police department? These are the barriers that I'm going to dismantle, but I'm not going to do it just by finding ethnicity. I'm going to do it by finding the quality that is available in our city. Good players have sat on the bench too long. I'm getting them in the game so they can use their professional experience, their emotional intelligence, and their ability to understand the cultural norms that we need. Cultural competency is part of the criteria that we need to solve the systemic problems that we are facing. And so I'm happy today to announce our new commissioner of the Department of Correction, Mr. Louis Molina.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor-elect Adams, for this honor. I am humbled to serve as the next commissioner of the Department of Corrections, overseeing New York City's boldest. Like the mayor-elect, I too am a New York City kid. My family is from the Bronx, where I was raised, and I always wanted to make a difference in my community, and that's why I chose public service as my calling. After graduating from Christopher Columbus High School in the Bronx, I served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. And like the mayor-elect, I'm also a veteran of the New York City Police Department. My 20-year career in law enforcement, including my current role as chief of the City of Las Vegas Department of Public Safety, has prepared me for this moment. I bring a unique perspective to this role, not only because of the breadth of my experience, but also because members of my family have been involved in the criminal justice system. I understand the flaws embedded in our system and the urgent need for reforms that balance the need for safety with the imperative of upholding human dignity. The women and men that work in the Department of Correction play a vital role in rehabilitative process and ensuring that those placed in our custody by the courts are safe and maintain their access to justice. The need for reform of our city jails has never been more urgent than it is now. As commissioner, I work with Mayor Adams to immediately improve conditions on Rikers Island for correction officers and the incarcerated population. We will not tolerate rampant violence, inhumane conditions, and a general culture of disorder in Rikers. I have been successful in enhancing safety and security of correctional facilities because I have always partnered with the labor leaders that represent the uniform and civilian workforce. I've worked with advocacy groups and nonprofit organizations that support the incarcerated population, and I've also worked with the formerly incarcerated who have shared their experience with me and my teams so that we can provide the right supportive programming, education, and treatment to develop the continuum of care the justice-involved population need for successful reentry back to their respective communities. We will also work to establish programs that help people transition out of the criminal justice system to become more productive members of society, just as I did when I was at the Westchester County Department of Corrections. But I want to be clear, programs and support make a difference, but we can't achieve that if we don't have safety and security as a foundation to deliver these important services to the incarcerated population in our care. And we will change the culture of our criminal justice system to emphasize the need for holistic rehabilitation over the punitive policies of the past. For too long, we have managed our public safety approach with slogans and not science. And our strategies to improve safety and security, as well as programs and support, must be evidence-based if we want to achieve trust and legitimacy in our system of justice. I am excited to get to working implementing the mayor-elect's vision and look forward to working with the uniformed civilian and staff that have sacrificed through the most difficult time of our city and country during the height of this pandemic. Your collective service is the most valuable asset of this department has. I'm ready to get to work on day one, and I thank the Mayor-elect Adams for this trust that he has placed on me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to go one at a time. We're going to start with on topic, and again, when I call on you, we're going to hand the microphone so folks can hear on live stream. Let's start with Dave Evans from ABC.
Louis, I just had a question for you, and then also for the mayor-elect, a little bit of a different question. But since you know the jail inside and out, Rikers, what is your opinion of why it has become so horrible this year specifically? Is it because of the pandemic? Is it because of, it just seems like that we have this crisis, but there's no sense of urgency to fix it?
So myself and my team, especially the uniform executive and senior staff, are going to be doing a complete assessment so that we can come up with the solutions that are the best practices to deal with those issues.
And Mayor-elect, I wanted to ask you, you said, and you've said this before many times, that we have to stop the pipeline if we're going to close Rikers. Are we still on track to have it closed in 2027 or not?
Two things. Number one, I want to respond to what you asked the incoming correctioner. This is not new. It's just got on everyone's radar. We knew for a long time that Rikers was dysfunctional, and COVID just was the straw that broke the facility's back. There has been a problem in Rikers Island during the days when I was policing. No one would listen to those officers and inmates. We are on track. I have stated that I believe we need to close Rikers Island, but while we're closing Rikers Island, you cannot have a facility where the gates and doors don't work. We cannot have jails there that we can put prisoners in that are safer than the facilities that we currently have. We cannot have a facility that is dirty, poor lighting. Inmates are not allowed to do rec time. We don't have educational opportunities. We have just basically created this place that is just inhumane. And so we are on track to close Rikers Island. We're going to live up to the commitment on what was laid out, but while we have the institution open, it must be a place of dignity and not a place of shame.
Gloria?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor-elect, and congratulations, Commissioner, for both of you. Two questions. First, you both seem committed to closing Rikers Island, and you are obviously familiar with the jail complex, and you're talking about how there's a crisis there now. 16 people have died. What can you do, what will you do, other than doing your assessment in the first 100 days to get a handle on the crisis that is not just affecting detainees, but as you said, also correction officers?
So we have hundreds of years of experience within the uniform ranks at corrections, and I'm not going to make decisions on the fly here at a press conference, but I can assure you that we're going to do an assessment, but we will also be taking swift, appropriate action.
Mayor-elect, you have committed to the closure plan, but are you also leaving the door open to reconsider some of the new jail locations? I know you said you wanted to talk with some of the new council members to address possible concerns. So is there a possibility that the plan that is in place now might actually change under your administration?
The goal is not to slow down the timetable and have a lengthy ULERP procedure again, but to hear the real concerns, particularly in the Bronx, for example, of the locale of the jail, to find out how we can make it safer, if there's some things that the incoming council person would like for us to look at, but just to engage in a conversation. We're about to inherit 4 new borough-based jail facilities, and I really want to have a conversation with those who are going to be my partners in the next 4 years. But we're on the time track. We're going to adhere to that. The rules were put in place, and we're going to move forward with getting it done.
Both for the new Commissioner Molina and for the Mayor-elect, I wondered if you could specifically address the uptick in custody deaths on the island, what you think is causing it, and then also how you're going to uplift morale with the correction officers.
So I think morale is very, very important, especially when you're leading a paramilitary organization. So that's one of the things that we'll be addressing as well. I don't want to speculate on the causes of death of those persons that passed away, but I'll be briefed on what may have occurred, and we'll take appropriate action if necessary.
We should look at each case, analyze the case, find out how it happened, and put in place those things that need to be done to not ensure the reoccurrence. You know, the number of deaths are serious. Morale is right here. These are the credible messengers. And I think far too long we have demonized those men and women who are law enforcement officers. And the things I hear about correction officers and how they're treated is just unbelievable. These are law enforcement officers. They should be able to go to the facility and not have human waste thrown on them. They should not be head-butted and have their noses broken. They should not be slashed and assaulted. They should not be sexually abused. These are law enforcement officers. And because they're not NYPD, we tend to believe we don't care what happens to them. Well, I say no to that. I'm telling these union leaders and these officers, just as I'm telling my cops, I have your backs when you do the right thing, I'm saying to this union, I have your back. I have your back to do your job. If we send you on Rikers Island, then we need to send you with the same level of respect we do for police officers when we send them on patrol. And that's how we're going to boost our morale, by having a mayor that is not going to be a stranger to the facility, and a commissioner that's going to sit down and get input and feedback from those who are carrying out the job. We're not going to allow abuse in the facility. We're going to make sure that we create an environment that prisoners and officers are safe. When you look at the numbers, the overwhelming number of people who are creating violence, they're creating that violence on other inmates. We have to acknowledge what's happening.
Good morning, Mayor-elect and Commissioner. Nice to meet you. Commissioner, I want to know what your strategy is going to be for interacting with the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, which has clashed with the de Blasio administration over, basic jail operations, but also vaccine mandates.
So I have just a record of always partnering with the labor leadership that represent uniform workforce as well as the civilian workforce. We have a lot of civilians and contract workers that work on Rikers Island as well. I don't want to forget them. We have to be partners in this to turn this around. And I expect to have an open door with them and communicate with them regularly, as I will communicate with the uniform leadership to make things better or improve things on Rikers Island for the department.
Good morning, Mayor-elect, and good morning to the incoming commissioner. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There have been some pretty urgent staffing issues on Rikers Island, which have led to officers working triple shifts, as well as some of the detainees not being able to get medical care and meals in a timely manner. How do you deal with that shortage in the short term? And is part of the answer bringing in private contractors to help out with some of the issues on Rikers Island?
Yeah, so I have the full faith in the staff that's on Rikers that they have the skill and the capability to solve this problem. We're not going to come up with the solution at this moment, but it's going to be after thorough assessment up and down from security operations to medical treatment and other treatment modalities that were provided for the incarcerated population. That's what that assessment is going to address.
But just a follow-up question. I mean, if these issues are urgent and people aren't getting medical care, people working triple shifts, and it's happening now, how do you, I guess, more quickly address it since these things are so
Well, they're
pressing?
complex problems, and we've done too many quick, fly-by-night solutions to get things done. And that's not how I'm going to operate. It's going to be in consultation with my leadership team in order to address these issues.
And it's important to point out that those who need medical care, they will get medical care. Those who need the policy around vaccine and vaccinations, the commissioner does not set that policy. I set that policy. And any policy that I set will be carried out. We are going to make sure we sit down. I'm a big believer. I stated this over and over again. Medical reasons and religious reasons that are legitimate, that's the conversation we're going to have. But we see the spike in COVID. We see what's happening. I need my workforce vaccinated. We are going to continue to push the booster shot. I am a self-admitted afraid of needles, but I took all of them. And so we want people to be vaccinated. We have to push back COVID, and that's crucial.
Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, and congratulations, Commissioner. For a question for both the mayor-elect and the commissioner, there's been a push among reform advocates recently to do away or at least reduce restrictive housing, such as solitary confinement in Rikers and other facilities. Do you think there's a place for restrictive housing at Rikers, or do you plan to try to do away with it?
So I think the numbers speak for themselves, right? We have record-setting inmate-on-inmate assaults. We have staff being assaulted on the island. There are violent people, a percentage, on Rikers Island, and we need a method and a restricted housing solution for them in order to make sure that they don't hurt or injure anyone else.
Think about this. Let me tell you the biggest restrictive housing. Jail. You commit a slashing on Court Street, you go to jail. So while you're in jail, you commit a slashing on an inmate, you don't go to jail. I mean, this is not making any sense. If you say to a violent person that slashed an inmate that nothing is going to take you out of population so you don't slash other inmates, that sends a terrible message. And so you could have segregation without it being inhumane. We're not talking about going to the days of being in the hole. We're not talking about locking someone into a small cell without allowing them out. No, we're saying if you exhibit violent behavior on inmates or correction officers, you must be removed from general population until you get the rehabilitation assistance you need, that you're no longer committing violence. The overwhelming amount of violence that takes place is inmate on inmates, and there's a small number of inmates who are carrying out this violence. And so to say nothing is going to happen to them, that is just the wrong message. And what I would love for all those who are advocating for that, I would love for them to do a tour. Do one tour on Rikers Island and see what life is like with a violent person. Not every inmate there is violent. They want to serve their time. They should not be the victim of those overly aggressive, violent people. So the mayor announced December 31st, he's going to empty out punitive segregation. They better enjoy that one-day reprieve, because January 1st, they are going back into segregation if they committed a violent act. That is unacceptable. You know, I am not going to allow inmates and officers to be the victims of violent people. I'm going to protect New Yorkers, and I'm going to be unapologetic about protecting New Yorkers. People don't deserve being assaulted. And people who believe they can assault innocent people, they're not going to have a good run as Eric Adams being the mayor.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, you just name-checked Mayor de Blasio there. I guess I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit, and the commissioner as well, if he feels like it. You're both describing horrendous conditions on Rikers Island that you both say have been ignored for much, much too long. Do you think the mayor, as well as current Commissioner Schiraldi, has just been approaching this issue completely wrong? And can you elaborate on how they've done it wrong?
Well, I believe that the commissioner has a good heart. There are things he wants to do that's a little different than what I wanted to do. I think that housing gang members together is a mistake. I believe that allowing people who commit violent acts against officers and inmates and not having a clear message that's unacceptable, I think is a mistake. I think how we set the tone of supporting our officers, not giving them masks in the beginning of COVID, standing at the foot of the Rikers Island Bridge and standing with these officers and what they're going through. Not fully protecting the civilian population, the number of sexual assaults that are happening, just not sending the right message that violence is not going to be tolerated. And the conditions of the facilities. I mean, my staff, we walk through the place. It's filthy. You don't have to have a multi-million-dollar budget to clean the floors, to put light bulbs in, to make sure that water is wiped up. Just basic things. It's just inhumane. I was blown away when we walked through the place of what that facility is going through. Just common decency is not there. It's a culture of not having common decency. Committing a crime does not mean the city should commit a crime on you by not taking care of you.
Elizabeth, and then we're going to move to off topic.
Good morning. This is a question for the mayor-elect. So criminal justice experts, including prosecutors, have said that court delays are one of the most significant reasons why the jail population has ballooned during COVID. Do you have a plan to get the courts back up and running during COVID and up in full capacity? The courts say they don't have the sufficient space for social distancing.
Well, that's outside of my span of control, because I don't control the court system. I sat down with Judge Janet Fiore and had a conversation about that. It's long overdue for us to sit down and look at our entire criminal justice apparatus, particularly the court system. It's taking too long. Either a person is guilty or innocent, and if they're guilty, then they should go up to our state correctional facilities that are built to house people long-term. If they're innocent, they should be released. So, one, I want to use probation differently. I want my probation officers to become life coaches. I want them to encourage people on how to stay out of jail. Instead of this antagonistic relationship between between probation officer and inmate. I want to be able to use technology. Zoom, we all discovered it during COVID. Why do you have to come all the way downtown and visit your probation officer? Stay at your job, do a Zoom visit, get empowerment from doing so. We need to think differently about this relationship that we've had for such a long period of time. And I think it's crucial that we move at a faster pace to do hearings, not trials, do hearings through video technology. When I was there on Rikers Island, the system was broke. It's not functioning correctly. We need to build out a better system so while you do Wade and Hutley hearings before trial, that we can expedite the process more. It's imperative that the court system stop being the bottleneck, that we don't have people at Rikers Island for a long period of time. It is a problem, and I think the partnership with the city and the partnership with the judges and the court system, we could come up with real solutions, and I don't think that has been done correctly.
Okay, we're going to move to off-topic now. Gentlemen, if you want to stay
Yeah,
on.
this gets painful. You guys don't. You can step over.
Let's start with Laura.
Hello, Mayor-elect.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
With the new COVID cases and the Omicron, hope I'm saying that right, spike potentially, have you had any conversations with the de Blasio administration, either in City Hall or in the health system, about what's going on right now, and anything that you think the city should be doing that it isn't in the days before you officially take over?
Yeah, we need to continue the advocacy for vaccinations and booster shots. It is clear that that is our best and most potent weapon against COVID. I am going to lean into, as my census teams, as I stated several times, we're going to allocate funding for them to really get in those communities while numbers are low in the areas of vaccines and booster shots. The goal is to get as many people as possible to take their vaccinations and the booster shots. And then we have to encourage parents with children. You're seeing a number of schools are closing. We're seeing the uptick is really impacting our young people, and we have to encourage parents, those 5 to 11, to get their children to receive the vaccine. And we have to really push back on this misinformation. The amount of information out there on social media is just frightening. We have to get vaccinated and continue to expand. And then do what the governor did. The governor's right. Let's put back on our face masks. We have to get over this period. More people are indoors, colder weather, holiday season is coming up. We have to remind New Yorkers about the conditions that we're facing. And lastly, we're going to put in place a color-coded system that brings a level of clarity based on where we are, something similar to the terrorist alert. If we hear a green, a yellow, a red, New Yorkers should know automatically that this is a moment when we should be taking extra precautions and what we should do to get things done. We have to speak in one language, in a clear language, on how we're going to push back on these increases.
If you had to put a color on where we are right now with the color-coded system, where would we be, you think?
I think right now, based on this uptick in numbers, we're at the mid-level that we need to take special precautions where we are. You know, red is shutdown language, and we never want to get there of shutting down our city again.
Thanks, Mayor-elect. Good to see you.
Thank you.
December 27th, Mayor de Blasio's vaccine mandate for private sector workers goes into effect, and then he's out of office 4 days later. Big, giant question mark for all of New York City businesses, what happens on January 1st. I know you've been somewhat non-committal about this. What can you tell businesses come January 1st? What can they expect around this mandate, around what will be required of their employees?
I have already started I met with close to 90 business leaders, some of the Fortune 500 companies, including Google, Delta, and others, and stated with them, help me figure this out. How do I deal with the twin crises of the pandemic of COVID and the economic crisis that we're facing? And just ask them, how does this impact you? How do we do it correctly? Do you need more time? What should we be doing? And we received some good feedback from businesses, because what is happening with small businesses is different what's happening with large corporations. Many of our large corporations, they already have vaccine mandates. But how does this impact small businesses? Because we don't want to do something that is going to tilt our economic stability. And I'm open to see how do we accomplish that. The mayor put it in place for on the 27th. Long before that, we're going to ensure that we have a real plan that's not going to impact our small businesses. Of my understanding, he had to do it universally, because if he would have only said certain sizes of business, then that's not going to stand up to Supreme Court muster. And so that's why he did it in a universal fashion. And I want to see what is the real impact on our economics. I partnered with Kathy Wild from the Partnership Chamber of Commerce and other businesses to say, how do we get the results we need without hurting our economic stability? See, I am reluctant to say that, because by saying that, it's sending a message that I'm going to just wait until Eric becomes mayor and he may change something. No, I want people to get vaccinated. And so what the mayor's doing, we got one mayor, let him finish out his term, and then we will have a new mayor, and I will continue to do what's best to keep the city safe, following the science. If my Department of Health, if my EDC, if my CDC, if my Department of Health and Mental Hygiene say, Eric, you need to do this, we're going to follow the science. And I'm going to clearly let New Yorkers know my action is based on the science.
Hi,
How are
Mr.
you,
Mayor-elect.
Good.
Nice to see you. Two questions, if possible. One, you mentioned the importance of booster shots. Are you thinking about potentially requiring the booster shot in order to be considered fully vaccinated in New York, or some sort of system where, you know, if you were vaccinated double vaxxed more than 6 or 8 months ago, maybe you're no longer considered vaccinated? And then also, can you just give us a little more specifics on whether at any point, if the numbers continue to go in a wrong direction, you would consider a vaccine mandate in schools?
Yes, first the booster shots, and you're right. And I was surprised to find out, Melissa, how this is almost like the flu shot. You know, I think it was the CDC that stated we may reach a point where we will be taking booster shots every year. And this is our new norm. I take my flu shot every year, and so we may be back with COVID. And again, I cannot say this enough. I'm going to follow what the science says. If you put smart people in place so you get smart advice. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert. If my Department of Health and Mental Hygiene says, Eric, we need to be mandating booster shots, I'm going to mandate booster shots. If they state that we need to put in every year, come back for new shots like we do the flu season, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do whatever is needed, that I don't shut down my city again, and I don't have this pandemic win out and hurting New Yorkers, because I'm not going back to those days when we were at the height of COVID. We're going to continue to have this soft touch to tell parents, we need for you to vaccinate your children. But if we reach the tipping point that the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is saying, Eric, we need to put a mandate in place for our schools, then I'm going to follow their advice. Everything I do on COVID is going to be based on the science. And if we stand behind the science, then we can get over the emotion and those numerical minorities who are just vehemently against a vaccine. But we have to stand behind the science.
Thank you. I just want to go back to one point that you made earlier, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. You said, enjoy the reprieve now. The mayor had committed to ending the use of solitary confinement. Are you saying, and are your incoming commissioners saying, that you're going to put the practice back in place Layleen Polanco was being held in solitary. Khalif Browder was held in solitary at one point. And there's been a lot of research and data showing the harms of solitary, particularly on younger people. So are you putting that policy back in place?
Well, clearly, you know, it appears as though all those cases that you're talking about are significant cases. That's the abuse of a tool. An abuse of a tool turns into a weapon. And anyone that advocates not having punitive segregation, then we need to stop putting people in jails after they commit homicides. That is punitive segregation. That is taking people out of general population and placing them in a place that they can't harm innocent people. That is what punitive segregation is. So many people want to romanticize that, you know, oh my God, we can't put people in punitive segregation. That is not a reality. I am going to institute a program that is not draconian, that is not going to abuse people, that is not going to lock them down in cells that could harm them mentally. I'm going to take violent people and place them out of general population and place them in an environment where they can get the assistance they need to stop being violent on inmates and correction officers. That is what I'm going to do. So if the mayor is saying that we're just going to take everyone in punitive segregation and we're putting them back in general population, regardless of what they did, regardless of the assaults, regardless of how many times they assaulted people, we're just going to put them back, that is dangerous. Just as someone says, let's just empty out jails, forget about the person who's a mass rapist, forget about the person committed a homicide, forget about if the person stabbed and killed people, let's just bring them back into general population. I would not do that to you as a citizen. I'm not going to do that to the inmates and the correction officers that are in our jails.
So you'll consider putting it back into place in your own
Punitive segregation based on my definition of removing violent people from general population.
Nick, New York Times. And then we're going to do just a couple more guys.
Hi, Mayor-elect. You've spoken with each of your announcements about emotional intelligence. Could you give us examples of what stood out in the interviews of those appointments you've made so far that demonstrate that emotional intelligence, to try and put a little bit sharper definition on what you mean?
Yes, thank you. There's a term you're going to hear often. How do you manage your emotions during difficult situations? All of these jobs are high, stressful jobs. Being a police commissioner, being a correction officer, being a commissioner of correction, the chancellor of our schools. How do you manage your emotions during difficult and challenging situations? That's not taught anywhere in our schools. Our children don't know about emotional intelligence. How do you handle your emotions? Are you compassionate? Are you caring? If you can't handle your emotions, how are you going to handle the emotions of citizens who are coming to you for the services that they deserve and the services they need? And so my criteria for those who are coming into my office is that they must be able to manage their emotion, manage how they handle themselves, be able to interact with the very difficult environment that they're about to encounter. I was looking for probably one of the best definitions I have: emotional intelligence, managing emotions to cultivate productive relationships with communities, relationship with colleagues, relationship with team members, relationship with loved ones, and even relationships with ourselves. Thank you very much. Like, that was a very emotionally intelligent action you just did. You know that? He saw that my voice was hoarse, and he just reached out, and he touched into his arm. Look at that. See? My whole team loves their emotional intelligent moment. You know that? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor-elect, so New York Presbyterian emergency room doctor had a tweet thread last night talking about the crisis that we're seeing in the emergency rooms in New York.
So the crisis of?
I'm sorry, in terms of COVID,
Okay.
an emergency room doctor was talking about how the Omicron variant is going to crush the hospitals. What we're seeing nationally in New York is that a lot of nurses have quit, a lot of medical professionals are quitting because of the sheer burnout from the past 2 years of the pandemic, of people who are both now vaccinated and unvaccinated going into hospitals. And while boosters are for sure helping the fact that we can all do this right now, there's big concerns among medical professionals that they're not going to be able to handle another wave. And so I wanted to know, at what point, we're talking about lockdowns, at what point do we need to do another lockdown in order to save the hospitals, considering that now it's a staffing shortage? It's no longer the beds issue, it's the fact that there might not be enough nurses to treat people.
It's going to take a lot for me to lock down the city. It's going to take a lot. We're going to use the precautions that's needed. If need be, we're going to go back to open the Jarvis Center, but I would do it a little differently. I would use the Jarvis Center for all of our cases so we could have a centralization of those who need the care. We found during COVID that people were coming to the hospital with COVID and infecting people who were there for other emergency issues. We're going to be smarter. We learned a lot. We are already building out a COVID team that is going to consist of business, the supply chain, law enforcement, medical professionals. How do we better utilize the resources? Why do we have some hospitals that had an overuse of PPEs and other resources and downstate did not? We're going to, during the crises, we're going to take all of the resources and manage an equitable distribution in real time. We're going to open the command center that is downtown Brooklyn, and we're going to build out a system with all of these professionals are in one room so we can respond quickly, and we're going to use data better. My goal is I don't want my city closed down again, and it's going to take a lot for me to close down the city. And we need to find out what the needs on the ground and better coordinate our resources. The goal is to properly have an equitable distribution in real time to respond to the COVID threat. We need to find out where's the threat, let's get on the ground there and apply the resources that we need to slow down the threat.
Julia. Thank you. Mr. Mayor-elect, there's been a lot of talk about who you might appoint as a deputy mayor for public safety, but have you decided that indeed you're going to create that position? And if so, what's the portfolio? Does it also include Department of Correction in addition to NYPD, and what else?
Yes, I am going to have that position. My commissioners, like Commissioner Molina, Commissioner Sewell, my chancellor, they are going to report to me. No one is going to get in the way of those commissioners of those important agencies that I ran on. No one is going to be between us. There's no daylight. They're not going to have a mid-management. My first deputy mayor is not going to make a determination. No, there's a direct report. The goal of the deputy mayor of public safety is to coordinate all of these entities. For example, we had, during the COVID crisis, what stopped the school safety officers from handing out masks? What stopped park police from playing a role in controlling the lines at the vaccination sites and the testing sites? Parks, people were not in the parks during the shutdown. And so we need a maestro. We need someone that is looking at the public safety of our city and coordinate all of the different law enforcement apparatus. There are many law enforcement agencies in the city that you're not aware of. Our marshals, our sheriffs, the school safety agents, as I stated, probation. We need someone that states we're in emergency. We need the entire team to come together and solve the emergency. Or in just normal times, We have an issue in a certain area, we need to deploy the entire apparatus. And then we need to coordination. Department of Probation should be coordinated with the Department of Correction. The Chancellor should be coordinating with the police. We have, under these administrations, do you know the Chancellor and the Police Commissioner rarely sit down and talk to each other? Which is mind-boggling. You know, someone should be updating a principle. There's a gang in your community that your students are being recruited to go into. The lack of information sharing is turning this city into a dysfunctional place. So that public safety person, his job or her job is going to coordinate the team. Because I'm going to be rolling out in a few days an aggressive diversification plan for the New York City Police Department. We're going to diversify our department based on what we have in place right now. And so that's the role of that public safety person, not to dictate to those commissioners and those law enforcement agencies, but to coordinate how do we deal with public safety in the city.
Thank you, Mayor-elect. You mentioned a command center in your approach to fighting COVID. I was wondering, I assume a health commissioner in your administration will play a large role in such a command center. Do you intend to keep Dr. Chachi on as your health commissioner, or are you looking around for another pick?
Like him, we're going to sit down and talk. I have an unbelievable transition team. By the time people get to me, they're already vetted, they questioned, they give me the last few names. He is one of the names that we are considering, and I'm going to sit down and speak with him and hear his vision. And not only hear his vision, you know, I have an act of asking questions that have nothing to do with the answers. I just want to see who you are as a person. You know, I want to see how emotionally intelligent you are. You can be as academically smart as you want. You could have all of these prestigious degrees. You could have all of these things, but you could be disruptive and destructive. And when I sit down in a room with him and I talk to him, I'm going to be able to determine that can you fit on Team New York. I like him a lot, but we are still looking to see what is our final plan.
Thank you. And
no, I'm sorry. Let him finish his question, since I had you out in the cold the other day.
Exactly. I appreciate that. All right. So to a completely different topic, on the council speaker's race.
Yes.
The cat's kind of out of the bag.
The
cat feels like it's out of the bag, to use a weird phrase, but you know. You and your team have been advocating for Francisco Moya to become the next speaker. A lot of members are feeling very differently, and it appears like Adrienne Adams has more wind in her sails, if you will. Mm-hmm. Do you regret getting as involved as you and your team have gotten into this race, considering where it's going and who you are supporting?
Well, the cat has never been in the bag. There was never a cat. That meow you were hearing, it was just some people who were running around the city saying meow, meow, meow. You know, you look at all the quotes, you look at all of the statements, I have been consistent. People call me and say, who do you like for speaker? I share my opinion. I tell them why, which has been consistent. I need a partner on public safety. I need a partner on being business friendly. Once I share that, people have been making their determinations. Well, this is what Eric said. Nowhere in any of your recordings or messages has there ever been what Eric has said. Everyone is determining for me what I have said. And I'm sure all of you know I have no problem saying publicly what I want to say. I'm clear. I want a partner that is pro-public safety, that's pro-business, and that's going to have our city recover. So whomever it is, the city council must pick. I can only share my opinion, and I shared my opinion in private to those who asked me for it. I told them what I felt, and I'm comfortable with doing just that. If I would have done something to disrupt the process, then I could respect that, but I have not. I have been just like every other New Yorker, opinionated.
Some would say your team has maybe disrupted the process. Do you regret what they have been doing?
Well, you know, the definition of team My team consists of the hundred thousands of New Yorkers that said there's something about Eric I like, and I want him to be our mayor. So who is our team? I mean, who is a team? My team, the people who support me know I have one position. You have a right to do what you want to do and what your opinions are. That's how I have always been. So if there are members who are associated with the campaign in one way or another, a volunteer, a prior consultant, because the campaign is over, if they are doing actions based on what they believe, they have a right to do so. They have a right to do so. Not only did Adrienne Adams endorse me, she voted against defund the police. She is also something very unique. She shares my last name. And we were high school classmates. We both went to Bayside High School. And so from what I'm hearing from the cats that are in the bag, that both Adrienne and Moya seems to be the two candidates that people are looking at. I can work with both candidates. They believe in we need to keep our city safe. And that is important to me. The prerequisite to prosperity is public safety and justice. And that is what I shared and will continue to share. They would probably call another Adams the Adams family. And since I have a bald head, you know who I am. Thank you.